Hi, welcome to yet another session of Dr. Spotfire. Your host here, Dr. Vishakha Mujju, and I have my colleague Divya Jyoti Rajdev with me. Learning is not driven by answers, but by questions, and we really encourage people once again to submit their questions, and we are continuously monitoring our community site. So this is your crew. So we have Divya Jyoti Rajdev here with us today. We are all based out of Palo Alto. Let me go ahead and get started. Alexis, can you just provide me the, yeah, thank you. So let me go ahead and get started. Today, we don't have any featured session, but we have questions which come from broad categories. So we are picking up multiple questions. So let me share my screen. And I really like this idea of having questions right on the left side from the community itself using this HTTP option. So the first question we will be covering today would be regarding string functions. So this question has already been answered, but I just want to kind of deep dive into string functions. How to find values that are ending with -r and replace them with something. So there is a column which has part number like 424242R, 2345R. The requirement is when we have -r, we should consider the parent part number, and the part number should become 2345. Now, in this case, I just added a little bit more to the data, like kind of synthetically generated this data where I'm having this column, which is the part number column, and the value, which is some kind of metric there. Now, one of the solutions is to use a function called a substitute. But before using a function called a substitute, I deliberately added this 12, 13, kind of some kind of lot number to this part number, which I can use by string split. So if I view my data panel, so I have my data panel and I look at this data table, I have kind of multiple data tables in my, and I look at this column. And if I see this column, I can see this is the unique count, these are the categories, and these are the values here. It's of type string. The moment it is of type string, I have this action option available, split column. So I can pick up this split column, and I can say, I can use any separator. I could have used this hyphen as a separator as well. But right now, I just want to take out this lot number from it. So I can use this separator here, and I can specify a number of new columns. You have any characters you want to remove from beginning or end, you can specify that as well. And I can click OK. I have two columns. So you can see this one column is just that. I can rename it and call it, this is the lot number. And this column is the one where I have 4236-R. Now here also I can further split. So I can say, okay, go for another split. And in this case, I have these, I can say, give me new columns as 2 or give me new columns as 1. Okay, and you can see I don't need that -r option. So it kind of automatically takes it out, and I just get another split where I see just these part numbers. So I am extracting these part numbers from a string, and I'm able to kind of see. So this is the second split, and I can see this is my part number. I can rename them. I can delete any of those columns or whatever I require. I can have those. But the string split, this is like out of box here available. I don't have to write any function. I can clearly use a user-friendly interface, and I'm able to kind of extract my that particular value out. Now this one, so this one, let me kind of rename this one. So let me call it my test. So I'm just calling it as test. This one is something where you have this 4236-R. Now there is another way I can achieve same results. So I have now this, so let me see that in the table. So let me add those columns. This is a common thing which happens when you look at the table. If add new columns is not automatically checked, whenever the new column will be created, you won't be able to see it. So I will make sure that right now, because I want to see what the new column is added, so I can add new column automatically. So I have this test column, which I want to kind of split. But now I don't want to use the string split. I want to insert a calculated column. I want to explore these statistic text functions. And there is one of the functions in those text functions is substitute. So I can substitute in any column. So there's an example, whatever that value is, so I can say substitute in this test column. What do I want to substitute? I want to take this minus R, wherever it is. Instead of that, give me just null. So I want to replace this minus R by null, or I might have some other options where I want to replace it by something else. And this will be my, let's say, test 1. And I click OK. Since I have added new columns automatically, you can see you have extracted this part number. So one of the ways for string splitting was string split, which you could use. Another would be any of these text functions like substitute, or if I even go back here into calculated column and I kind of explore more on the text functions. So in this case, concatenate is not something I need. I have Rx replace. So this is another kind of useful function whenever you are working with strings. Then I have Rx extract. I have substitute. I can pick up a substring out of it. That could be another way if I know already that, oh, this is the length of it. Usually when it comes to part numbers or these kind of calculations, the lengths more or less are specified. Then I can pick up substring out of it and say, okay, give me mid of this or give me left of this. I can combine multiple string functions as well. I can trim. So these are the out-of-box text functions available. So any questions so far? Feel free to post your questions onto QA panel, onto chat panel. I will be, after every question, I will be kind of looking at the chat panel, at the QA panel for any questions. So this was our first question. Next, I want to, this is a common kind of requirement, how to bring in XML data into Spotfire. So we know whenever we have to add data, we add it from, we add data table from various sources. We have the various databases. So there are multiple ways. But when I'm adding kind of out of box, I don't see an XML as a data source. So let me add data table, add from a file. So when I'm adding data from a file, my supported files are these: Excel, CSV, I can have SAS data files, I can even go for Microsoft Access database files, Spotfire log files, S3 shape files. I have all these as supported files. There's nothing as XML file, but that doesn't mean I cannot bring XML files into Spotfire. What I will do is, in this case, I will use a simple data function to pull my XML file. So I have my XML file, which is test.xml file, which I have kind of saved at this directory. So what I will do is, let me insert a data function. So I will kind of I will add a data function. So I will register a data function in this case. So instead of kind of inserting a ready data function, what I will do is I will register a data function. Let me, before registering it, copy this script so that we can walk through the various steps. Tools, register data function. I can call it my XML load. Now so before using the script, what I have done is I have used tools and I have kind of loaded the XML package. So that XML package is already installed. That's why I can use this command library XML. Now, there is a common question. I can type library XML here, or I could kind of have my XML here. So I could type just XML here, and that package would be loaded. Whether you write those here or whether you write as a library XML, the output would be same. Your package would be kind of loaded. And then what I will do is I can specify the path. Now this path could be passed via a property, but in this case, to make things simple, I just pasted that path here. So this is the path from where, and this XML path is defined in this library XML. So I'm able to kind of store that in a result variable. Then what I'm doing is I'm converting that XML data in this to kind of XML data frame. And that XML data frame, I'm kind of storing in output table 1, and that's my output parameter. So what I will do is I could directly take this XML data frame as an output parameter, or I can kind of define any of my output parameters. So I can click on this, right click and say make it as an output parameter, and the value is kind of a table because what is coming out there is a table. I will click OK. So I have an output coming as table. Now what I can do is I can run this. So I can run this. I can say, okay, give me an output as a data table, which is create a new data table and name it as output table 1. I can click OK. And okay, so I have that path is not kind of working for me. So let me check once again. Yeah, test.xml. Let me see whether I have C, users, administrator. I do not have that as a path. It is desktop and text.xml. So, okay, I don't have that file here. So since that file is missing here, that is where I don't have that. So let me use this rlight_xml instead of that. So let me use rlight_xml. So in this case also I will use rlight since that one was missing. That's why like it was not able to kind of, there was an error. So now let me run it.
The name is rlight_xml.xml, I think.
Just 1 minute. Let me check it once again. Yes, _xml. Thank you, DJ. So
caps.
Yeah. Okay, so let me run it. My output again, I want to use the same data table, output table 1. Okay, I have some warnings, but that is okay. I will still be able to kind of see that data table, and I would pick up that output table 1, and you can see that's my XML file, and I'm able to see that data as a table within Spotfire. So going back there and kind of looking at that XML file, if I open that XML file, this is my XML file. I have records, employee, name, score, start date, department, and this is like a kind of a temporary text XML file, which I can kind of modify, and when I run it, I would be able to see those changes kind of reflected back here as well. So this would be a way to kind of get your data, and I could create a button here which can kind of execute that data function. So say, for example, if I insert a new text area, I could say, okay, whenever that particular action control button, I could create a button here. So I could say this, and I could execute that data function. So I have this XML load data function. It gets executed every time a user presses that button. or I could have it refresh automatically also. But in this case, I would prefer having a button where I say, okay, get your XML data, or then creating something like passing the path of the file or location of the file, and then it could be URL as well, and then kind of getting that data into Spotfire. So once I have that data into Spotfire, I can further find out, kind of combine with other data sources. So this would be a kind of a simple way to get this. So I will be posting this as a community article, and you will be kind of able to see the script or this how to kind of get your XML data into Spotfire. So any questions on this?
No.
Okay. So let me go ahead and kind of pick up the next question that is about binning. So in this case, I'm not sure why this is not showing up. The question in this case was, can we achieve bi-weekly binning? So can we bin by 2 weeks? So that was the question. Now, before kind of attempting, I already have this question resolved. So if I have something as date, so for example, I pick up date joined. I pick up this date joined. What Spotfire provides me is binning of the date into year, into quarter, into month, into week, into day of month, day of week, day of year, and I can combine these. Now, this is what I have out of box here, but by default, there is no bi-weekly option here. So let me go into the next way to kind of bin. So whenever I insert a bin column, depending on my data type, for example, my data type store location is string, I see only even distribution of unique values. I see substring comparison. If it's numeric, I see all these 5 options: specific limits, even intervals, even distribution of unique values, standard deviation. But there is nothing else where I can, even there is nothing as date is by default automatically. When you have a date column, you right click, you get bin by week. But there is nothing here out of box where you can see that there is a kind of a date binning. But there is another way to do binning. That is, in the background, whether I am using these out-of-box functions, like I'm using here, date joined, bin by week. So for example, I pick up this bin by week. So there is a calculation happening there, and there's a function associated with it. So if I right-click and look at the custom expression, this bin by date time is a function which is part of binning functions, and these are the binning functions available. In this case, your bin by date time works only with the date, where you specify, and you can see if I pick up this bin by date time, the first argument is date time or date time column to bin. The second argument is hierarchy level definition. You could write it as year, quarter, month, and the third one is like how you want to minute, millisecond, so like year, quarter, month, day. So you have this defined. But this kind of bins everything into weeks. So I can use bin by date time to kind of bin my data into weeks. So what I have done is, in this case, is I have already kind of created this week bin column. So if you look at it, if I show you edit data, edit column properties, if I kind of scroll down and look at this week bin, I have simply used week bin. Now, the problem with the week bin is it gives me output as a string. It gives week number, but it gives me output as a string. What I wanted is I wanted to further use this to bin into biweekly. That's why I kind of used the data transformation integer. So so if I take away this integer part, you can see the sample result is still 30. It is that week number, but it's of type string. Since I want to use it for further calculations, so I have kind of typed integer, and that makes the sample result still the same, but of type integer. And since it's of type integer, I can use it with more binning functions. I just showed you that when you have store location, your binning functions are restricted to substring or unique values, but the moment you have integer, you can kind of have more binning options. Now, once I have this week bin, then I used another calculation, which is bin by even distance. So in this case, my bi-weekly is 2 weeks, so I want 2 weeks to be clubbed together. So I can use this function bin by even distance, and I kind of specified that column, which is already giving me week bin, and then I specified that as, so bin by even distance groups the values in specified column, so there is an even distance between all bins. The first argument is column to bin, and second is the interval length. So in my case, since it's bi-weekly, I'm able to kind of add that as an interval length. Now, I'm not sure why this one is not showing up, but in this community question, so in this community question, let me kind of try to see. In this community question, it was also suggested, since this is not something out of box, and what I'm showing you is kind of a workaround to get it. There is a bin intervals, and you could always submit this onto IDEAS portal. So this would be ideas.tipco.com, where you won't have to do these 2 steps or 2 calculations. You can sign in using your email, or so I can sign in using my email. You can create your account in there, and then you will be able to kind of create new ideas and kind of, or maybe there is an idea which is already existing there. You will be able to kind of vote for those. So we have voting for ideas, so there could be popular ones which always kind of get implemented. So you can see the moment the voting is 174, it is under consideration, and definitely you would see like a lot of those are kind of already implemented, where more people vote for that particular idea. So, for example, edit data transformation. This was something which was a data table that is visualized could have been created using a long chain of data import and transformation steps, and you wanted like that to be. So if I open up this, this is kind of already implemented. So once your idea is kind of implemented, you would see this option here, and you will be notified that, okay, this was something which got implemented, and you can see this is in Spotfire 7.9. This is coming up, and you can kind of edit your transformation. This was something which was submitted in Feb, and you see within 1 year, it is already in the product itself. So I would highly encourage, if there is something you think it may be already there, then if you would already be knowing that, okay, it's already there and it exists. It may be already submitted as an idea, so those kind of ideas get combined and kind of voting get combined, or you may be able to see something else which people have asked and vote for it.
Vishakha, while you're also showing them around all the community features, I have sent on chat the latest graphics guide that is released with TEAR. So if you could do a show of that, that would also be very helpful. In the chat too, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, DJ. So graphics in TIPCO Enterprise Runtime for R. This guide provides examples and suggestions with R&R package and with CRAN packages. So you have kind of, you can use R graph to create an image file using TEAR R&R. So basically R&R package provides functions for running code in open source R. you can compare results of running the same code in different open source R and TIBCO enterprise runtime R versions. You can call function from an open source R package, and it returns the results to TER. You can use open source R to create a graphic and then return the graphic to be displayed in TIBCO Spotfire or a browser. So I have I was like, before this session, I was kind of working on a small example. Let me pick up that. So I was not this one. I was working on a small example. So what I was trying to use the R evaluate function. So what I did was I created a expression function. So I was trying to work with an example R in R. So what I did was I simply wanted to check whether that code is kind of running in Spotfire, in TER or in R. So what I did was I kind of loaded library R in R. There is a function called as reevaluate, and it evaluates the expression in R language interpreter via an reevaluator object, and it returns its value. If an error occurs while interpreter tries to evaluate the expression, the reevaluate call stop with the error message from the interpreter. That's calling reevaluate expression reevaluator. Acts like calling just expression. So this is again the detailed documentation would be there as a PDF file where you can see all the details. You can kind of see R graph, which provides mechanism for generating graphics by passing an expression to open source R and evaluating it there. So this could be solution to many things which are not able to run in TER, but you can still use open source R to execute those and have the results within Spotfire. So I just called it example R in R, and it's just a one-line function. The input one is the data I'm passing, and output is where I'm storing output. I created it a column function and just used log, but instead of using log function within Spotfire, it's using R. So this is the function I kind of created, and then when I will kind of insert a calculated column, I can use that function. Let me pick up kind of this data table, and let me pick up this function. So you can see this is kind of a function added in my Spotfire, and I can pass it, say, let me pick up this value, and I can call it R eval R in R test. So I have this value, and you can see I'm passing the input value, and it would, whatever the value is, it will give me log, and I can see that sample result is coming as 2.81. I can click OK, and let me change this table to, I use data table, and you can see I have R in R test where I have the log values here. So this would be another kind of way to test your R code. I know there is one of the participants who was working with forecasting package, which was kind of throwing some errors. I would suggest using it. This might be a workaround. I know we have already submitted that as on Ideas portal, and that may be something which may be kind of coming soon. But still, till that time, this would be a probable solution to kind of still get output into Spotfire and execute your code in R. So that was another one. Any questions so far?
Yeah, Vishaka, so there's a question about if there is a non-map chart that is basically any other type of visualization like the bar graph that you've got, how to get auto zoom in that. So for example, if you click on 2 bars of the bar chart, the graph should zoom in that. So you can, I think, show it through drill down or something like that.
So there is, so for example, you want to click on these 2, and you just want it to be kind of filtered to these 2. Yeah. There are multiple ways to do it. Like I have marking. I can, one of the ways I can show you is with this subsets thing. I know that this may not be a completely perfect example, but the subsets is where I can create. So this is my current filtering. I can add a subset based on marking. So I have this marking, whichever I mark, there is a subset. So I can click. I have these subsets. I can say trellis by subsets. Or let me use so that I can show you both. Okay. So what I'm doing is I have this current filtering, and if I go to properties and subsets, I have another one based on marking 2. But this one uses marking, so let me use marking 2 here. And now when I mark something here, you can see this bottom one kind of only shows me that highlighted portion. Now, what I will do is if I have a kind of visualization, this marking somewhere else. So for example, in this, what the trick I would do is I will not show any current filtering. I would show only marking data. And I might have the bar chart somewhere else, which I use to kind of see the details. So for example, if this is Los Angeles and New York, and this one uses, I need to have both of them use the same marking. So I will use this marking 2. And let me pick up New York. These are the bars only from New York. And if I have Los Angeles, these are the bars only from Los Angeles. If I have things like, say I have store number here, I pick up these bars, so I'm seeing only those bars belonging to those store numbers. Or if I use this binned week here itself, so for example, I have this binned week here, and I pick up only these bars, you can see I show those bars. Now the point is here you can see the axis still shows up. So I can go to category axis, I can go to settings, I can say I don't want all data, I want just current filtering only. And I can kind of use those there. So depending on what I have, so in this case with the subsets, it's all data. So, but if I want to kind of just have the drill down, I could kind of limit this by that. So, for example, if I don't use subsets, I could also limit data by this marking. So, in this case, whenever I will click here, I would see only the data belonging to that marking. So, let me show you. So in this case, the data drill down will kind of show you I am clicking on this and you see only those portions. I'm clicking on this, you see only these portions. Another way is, which I personally like is, say for example, I see this portion here and I want to go into details of that. I just right click and say marked rows filter to. So which simply, like, I don't have any other visualization to do. I just want to kind of see details of that. I right click and say filter to, and it kind of filters to only those. So that would be another way I kind of go deep into that particular area. I want to zoom into that area.
So, Vishaka, I have a follow-up question. So, initially when you showed current filtering and marking in the subsets, the trellis below, in that, remove current filtering and only do marking 2? Yeah. Now close this. Close the property box. So what happens if I click outside of the visualization? Can I unselect the marking from the same visualization, or do I have to have a parent visualization to control the marking?
You could select marking from the same, but that was not something. It's like you are on a same branch and you are cutting the same branch, because it would be better that you have some kind of parent visualization. In this case, there's nothing which stops me saying that this one should use the same marking. Say, for example, I don't limit it by this. I use the marking 2, and let me see the subsets. I have marking 2. So if I mark this, I would see only those 2. But then there will be no way for me to mark this data, because this data is not there, and suddenly I will end up in this situation where I don't have anything to mark. And since I'm using the same visualization for marking, I'm not able to mark it because everything is unmarked. I can right click, I can say marked rows, I can say invert. then I will see all my data, but that would be something like you would know that you have to right click, and since it's because of marking, it's not working, unmark, which if you are an expert Spotfire user, it may be easier for you, but then it may not be something that obvious for others. But I could always, like, there's nothing technically stopping me from doing this.
Okay.
But
and then
doing marked rows invert to get all the data back.
Are all these options available in the web player?
Yes.
Okay. So there is another question which is related to Google Graphs created in R. So to answer that, the way that Google Charts work is that they generate an HTML. So you can generate the HTML in TER. You could use the same code in TER and the HTML would be generated. To actually display it, you would have to use JSViz. We've done a couple of featured sessions on JSViz and also one about animation in JSViz. So if you are trying to get your Google Chart code in JSViz and it isn't working, please post it on community, hashtag it with Dr. Spotfire, and we can take it forward. But we've sort of discussed all of the building blocks needed.
Okay, so DJ, if you can share the link for that session which was done by Hector and the another featured session by Andrew onto the chat panel, that could kind of help audience. So my next one is about aggregation. So this is not where I have all the information, but I clearly understand what is happening here. So you can see many times when you try to do any kind of calculation on a custom expression, sometimes the error comes as please specify an aggregate method. So what that means is, say for example, I'm using a bar chart and suddenly I'm saying concatenate. So I'm using a custom expression. I am using, let's say, concatenate function similar to what is being used here. So concatenate and not these. Concatenate, let's say, store location, comma, store number. So I'm concatenating store location, comma, store number, and I'm clicking OK. You see, please specify an aggregate method. Now, whether it is unique concatenate followed by concatenate, why does it require an aggregate method? It's not anything to do with the calculation. It is more to do with the visualization. Now, I've seen this question coming up a lot of times. Now, if you see bar chart, a bar chart is a visualization where you define your categories and you define what expression you want. Say, for example, I might have each customer ID here, which I know in my data is unique. But the way bar charts are created, so I am looking at customer ID and I'm looking at their age, it automatically gives it some age. So in this case, some age and age would mean nothing. But the way bar charts are created is you have a categorical variable here and you have an aggregation here. That is because maybe there are multiple customers in your data. So how those multiple customers have to be handled? For example, when I pick up here store location, there are multiple rows belonging to each store location. That means whenever I'm using a customer age, I need to know whether I want to add all the customer ages or I want to know what is the average customer age. So I want to define my aggregation here. So that's a requirement of a bar chart visualization, or maybe some other visualizations, depending on what visualization you're using. So if you're using a table visualization, it's a single row of data, no aggregation required. But if you're looking at a visualization which is like a bar chart, definitely your y-axis requires an aggregation. So you need to define, okay, you are concatenating it. Now what if for each store location you have multiple values? What to do in that case? Do you want to pick up something max, some min, or some if it is like first, or if it is like something else? So with concatenate, you assume that it is like I'm kind of concatenating it, but here in this case, you depending on your actual data, if you kind of share your actual data, then I would be able to specify more. But this usually happens because there's a visualization associated with, and the way your data is there, Spotfire expects there is a kind of aggregation. Now I can show you another example where Spotfire expects an aggregation, but I can kind of, let me switch this visualization to a scatter plot. Now scatter plot, I have store location, I have average customer age. Now if I do just pick up customer age, none, it still works. In this case, I have an option called as none. It still works. But if I have marker by some gender, here I have each gender as marker by, and here I have store location, and again store location, the aggregation is none. It is possible that depending on my data, in this case, it's not kind of throwing up error, but depending on my data, when I say each point is a particular location, it may not allow me to kind of have without aggregation. So here the aggregation none is by default automatically selected, but it is possible that I might see please specify an aggregate method. It may not allow me to kind of use none. That could be another use case where a scatter plot is supposed to be each point and you may not even need aggregation. So you would see in certain visualizations this option as none is there. So that would be another way to kind of not, if the aggregation is not required, that would be another way. Similarly, in a line chart also, or any other visualization, you would see depending on whatever expression you are using. Here, you can see in a line chart, there is still an option as none. So there could be none option used, no aggregation. Then you can see, okay, this is how it kind of comes out. But based on your data, based on your visualization, that would be more kind of a point of interest than your calculation itself. And once the visualization is properly configured, you will be able to kind of see your expression. So this was another common issue. Now I have another basically requirement, which is a little like, we had a question from last time that where we wanted to refresh. So it was a refreshing a data table. I kind of misunderstood as a reload data. So maybe my data changes and I want to click on it and I can reload my data. But the requirement was not for reloading data or refreshing the data. It was more like, for example, I have two solutions for that. I will show you both the solutions. So for example, if I view my filter panel, so every time I pick my filters, what happens is it kind of, if it's a huge data set, I'm picking Boston, then I'm picking customer IDs, then I'm picking customer age. So I'm making multiple filter choices. All these multiple filter choices, every time I make kind of a data reload happens, and then I kind of see that data, then another cycle of reload happens. But the customer in this case did not want that. The customer wanted that once all the choices are made, then there should be a button, or then in the last choice, that's the time the data should be filtered out. So what I did in this case is, so let's say I have the 754 rows. This could be add as many zeros you want. This could be as many zeros there. But what I did was I inserted, so this is a solution without any scripting, without anything. So what we do is, what I did was I inserted a data table. So I said add a data table. In that data table, whatever my filter choices are, so I added it from the existing data table. So it may not be that simple to understand. I added it as from an existing data table. I called it pivot. So I have that data table already there. I used my transformation, which is all those filter choices. So I might be giving people pick a store location, within store location, pick a store number, within store number, pick a gender. I might be giving them these choices. And then I did not pick customer ID because it was unique. That doesn't make any sense. I just wanted a small subset created for only filters. And then I used some value as count of customer ID, how many customers are there. So I kind of used that aggregation here, count. So this is a smaller subset. Now this table, I have already this created. So let me show you this table here. Let me add this table. I have already this created as test data pivot. Now this table has only 168 rows. Now, irrespective of your number of rows, the original table might have 754,000 rows. This smaller table, which just gives me those filter choices, is definitely going to be having maybe only 164 rows, depending on how many locations you have, how many store numbers you have, how many studies you have, or how many wells you have, or how many, whatever you are looking at, how many choices you have there. So how many values are there? So this could be already loaded into Spotfire, this table. And then based on what user selects, data could be loaded on demand. That could be one option, but in that case, that is one of the options there. But here what I have done is, with this table, with this smaller subset of table, I created this tree map. This tree map has Seattle, Los Angeles, New York. And then based on this tree map, I have the store number. When I select Los Angeles, it shows me only store numbers belonging to Los Angeles. When I select store number 52, it shows me only females and males from that store number. And then when I select females, it kind of will drill down to those values only. Because what I have done is I have related these tables. So if I go to data table properties, I have related these tables. I have created a relation. So gender, store location, store number, between these two tables is related. So once I mark something, this one is kind of the marking here, whatever is the marking here. So if my data marking here is marking 4, that is what it is limited by. So here I have marking 4. I don't need these. So that is
Vishakha,
what kind of limits it. Yes.
If you open a new tab and just make a table, can you show users how to do a top n range on any column and then extend that to doing a moving range? Like now, instead of doing a top 5, how can the user select 5 to 10, 6 to 12, so on?
Yeah, just let me finish because this one has another solution. So this is one of the solutions which does not require any coding. But then I have another one. Let me that is like I don't want to go through these steps, and I want kind of use Iron Python script where I can kind of click on a button and I will be able to kind of choose all those filters. So that would be another kind of solution which can be kind of used. So I have like another solution. I did not want to use script initially, but that might make it more easier to see. So for example, select your location. You have Los Angeles, select your store number, then select your gender, and then pick up your customers. So based on which customers you pick up, in this case, it is not like I'm using a summarized table. I'm using the same table. The only thing where the filter, this is basically these properties are helping me pick my filters. These are not filters, these are properties. And they are not tied to this data, only the customer ID. When I select customer ID, that's the time things change. But customer ID is dependent on these two. So if I change Los Angeles to Boston, I see here only Boston stores. Then if I change to males, I see here only these two. And when I pick up these two, only those two show up. I could say, I could kind of restrict it that if there is no store location selected or something, don't show any data. But it only, the reason I kept it like this is only when I make all the changes, then it refreshes. So if I go to edit, if I go to data function properties, there's no data function here, but if I go to document properties, I would see there is a script which is this apply filters, which is an iron Python script, and which is using these properties. So if I click on that edit script, again, we will be posting a community article on this, and we will be sharing this script with you. So it's basically looking at those document properties and taking those properties and applying that to a filtering scheme. So what a filtering scheme means is, say, if I reset all my filters, I can always create a filtering scheme which can save what my store location is, which store numbers, which customers, which age. Like, it can save my multiple filter choices by a single name. So in this case, instead of making those choices to a filter panel, what you are doing is you are making those choices to a property. So this property is one, then there's another property for store number, there's for gender, and all those properties are directly being applied to a filtering scheme, and this test data visualization uses that filtering scheme. So it has a filtering scheme, which is my current filtering scheme, or it could be a named filtering scheme. Right now the script makes changes to the current filtering scheme, but I could use any other name and have changes to that filtering scheme, which may apply to only this. So this would be another more clean, more automated solution for what you are looking for. Use properties and use iron Python script to kind of restrict your data, especially when your number of rows are many and you just want to make all your selections first. And you can kind of write a text area to provide all the sequence itself. But this one solution does not require any coding. It simply creates a smaller data set, and that can be used to even load data on demand, where I really like, instead of drop downs, I really like this tree map kind of thing, and I could directly pick, so it makes my selection very easy. If I add this hierarchy as store number, so if I add a store number here, even I can pick up, okay, I know, okay, 70 from this store, and then I can kind of use shift key or pick up these stores. So I'm picking up different stores from different locations, and then within those I'm kind of selecting here store numbers and then picking gender and then using that to kind of load my data. Okay, so then we have one more question is you want me to show the top N values, so let me use this data table.
So while you're configuring the question, I just want to leave a quick comment that we've got a lot of times people want to know how can they find their DXPs, organize their DXPs. So like we've got this question a few times now. So next week we'll show a DXP from where you're able to open another DXP, put in images of your current DXP screenshots and descriptions. And that's sort of what you can use to navigate. It can almost be like a content DXP from which you link to other DXPs. So we'll do an example of that next week. Similarly, can we use color in cells of a particular column of a cross table? Yes, you can. You can do it with a normal table also. We've got examples of that, and we will bring it up next week.
So I'm coloring by furniture, and what do you want? You want top, so you can add points, or you can add a rule which can show top 5 colored as green.
Yeah, so over here now you've been able to show top 5 and you can sort of select and filter through that. But the user wants control on dynamically choosing the rank. So top 5 or top 5 to 10 or something like that. So some way to configure the top 5 rule dynamically.
Okay, let me see. What we can do is there is something called as Boolean expression. And what you can do is you can edit it. Here there would be a property which can tell you whether you want top 5 or you want a top 10. And that property I can use to control top 5. I will have to kind of configure it and check it, but the way to do would be, so whenever you have these expressions, I could always have a value. Here I could have a custom expression, and instead of picking 5, I would use that property, and that property will say 7 or 8 or 9, But in order to go for a range, I would have to use two properties and kind of play around with these. So the way these are applied is they are applied by the first one, then the next rule. So I could have top 5 and I could have top 2. So you can see what the color would be. So it won't be like these two are applied. So first this color will be applied, and then this color will be applied. If I reverse their order, so if I have add rule, I have top 2, you will never see this purple. Okay, this is because the top 2 kind of takes, I'm not able to kind of modify the order, but this is the way the order is. So I will have to play with the order to get that top 5 and top 10. But if it is just top 5 or top 7 or top 8, this would be one of the ways. Or I could use a calculation or custom expression. So maybe next session we would go in details about this coloring and kind of showing top few values. Any other questions?
Yeah, so there's another question about how to send an email using automation services if there is an outlier or something like that. So the preferred approach is to use the alerting extension. I have just sent a link to the wiki for the same. It gives you a lot more flexibility than just choosing thresholded alerts, basically. So we also did a walkthrough of the alerting tool in one of the Dr. Spotfire sessions, but the wiki is available for more details.
Yeah. So is there any other questions? I think that would be all for today.
Web player documentation. Can you quickly get your hands on that? I have the bookmark link for 7.0.
I think that the docs.tipco.com would be the place where. So this would be the docs.tipco.com would be the place for any documentation. So I would have to search for the product and search for that particular version of the product, and I could kind of see all the documents related to that product. And you can always kind of create a sign up. You can register here and then kind of get access to all the documentation.
All right, so I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, for the very interactive session today, and we will get back about more polished answers to some of the queries we received on the fly. But it's always very exciting to be able to answer all the questions that you ask us in a live Q&A session.